More than 2,000 years ago, one man attempted what many believed was impossible. He did not command the largest army in the world, nor did he rule a mighty empire. Yet his decision would shake the foundations of one of history's greatest powers and redefine warfare forever. His name was Hannibal Barca, and his journey across the Alps remains one of the most daring military operations ever attempted. To understand why Hannibal crossed the Alps, we must first understand the world he lived in. The Mediterranean in the 3rd century BCE was dominated by two rising superpowers, Rome and Carthage. Rome was a land-based republic expanding relentlessly across Italy. Carthage was a wealthy maritime empire controlling trade routes across North Africa, Spain, and the Western Mediterranean. The rivalry was inevitable. The First Punic War had already proven how brutal this rivalry could be. For over 20 years, Rome and Carthage fought for control of Sicily. Rome emerged victorious, forcing Carthage to pay heavy war reparations and surrender territory. Though defeated, Carthage did not forget. The humiliation burned deeply into its political and military elite. Hannibal was born into this world of resentment and ambition around 247 BCE. His father, Hamilcar Barca, was one of Carthage's greatest generals and a sworn enemy of Rome. According to ancient sources, Hamilcar made his young son swear an oath of eternal hatred toward Rome, whether literal or symbolic. This story reflects a deeper truth. Hannibal was raised to see Rome as the ultimate enemy. As Rome consolidated power in Italy, Carthage expanded westward into Iberia, modern-day Spain. This region provided silver, manpower, and strategic depth. After Hamilcar's death, Hannibal rose quickly through the ranks. By his mid-20s, he was appointed commander of Carthaginian forces in Iberia. He proved himself brilliant, ruthless, and charismatic, commanding loyalty from soldiers of many cultures: Libyans, Iberians, Numidians, and Celts. The spark that ignited war came from the city of Saguntum. Although located south of the Ebro River, an area traditionally under Carthaginian influence, Saguntum had allied itself with Rome. Hannibal viewed this as a provocation. In 219 BCE, he besieged the city. After months of resistance, Saguntum fell. Rome declared war. Hannibal knew Carthage could not win a prolonged naval war against Rome. Rome's strength lay in its manpower, discipline, and ability to replace losses endlessly. A conventional invasion of Italy by sea would fail. Hannibal needed something Rome would never expect. He decided to bring the war directly to Rome's homeland by land. This decision meant marching an army from Iberia across southern Gaul, over the Alps, and into northern Italy. No major army had ever successfully attempted such a feat. The Alps were not merely mountains. They were a natural barrier of ice, cliffs, narrow passes, and hostile tribes. Roman strategists believed them impassable to large forces. That belief would become Rome's greatest mistake. In the spring of 218 BCE, Hannibal began his march with an army estimated at around 90,000 infantry, 12,000 cavalry, and dozens of war elephants. These elephants were not symbolic. They were psychological weapons, unfamiliar and terrifying to European enemies. The journey through Iberia and Gaul was already dangerous. Hannibal fought hostile tribes, negotiated alliances, and crossed major rivers like the Rhine under threat of enemy attacks. Roman forces attempted to intercept him, but Hannibal's speed and unpredictability allowed him to slip past them. By the time he reached the foothills of the Alps, Hannibal's army was already weakened. Supplies were low. Morale was strained. Ahead lay snow-covered peaks that many of his men had never seen before. Ancient historians describe the Alps as a nightmare. Narrow mountain paths forced soldiers to march single file. Landslides crushed men and animals. Freezing temperatures killed those unprepared for the cold. Local tribes ambushed the column repeatedly, striking from above and vanishing into the mist. Hannibal himself reportedly rode at the front, encouraging his men, pointing toward the distant plains of Italy, promising food, allies, and victory. Leadership mattered. Without it, the army would have collapsed. The elephants suffered terribly. Many slipped on icy paths and fell to their deaths. Others succumbed to cold and starvation. Yet their presence continued to inspire awe and fear. As Hannibal finally emerged from the Alpine nightmare, his army was no longer the unstoppable force that had left Iberia months earlier. Nearly half of his original soldiers were gone, claimed by avalanches, starvation, frost, and relentless attacks from mountain tribes. Of the elephants that had once terrified entire valleys, only a handful survived. Hannibal himself was injured, suffering from infections and partially blinded in one eye. And yet, despite everything, he had accomplished the impossible. He had crossed the Alps with an army. When the survivors descended into the Po Valley of northern Italy, the impact was immediate. Local Gallic tribes, long hostile to Roman domination, saw Hannibal not as an invader but as a liberator. Thousands joined his ranks, swelling his depleted army with fresh warriors who knew the land and despised Rome. Hannibal rested, reorganized, and prepared for what he had come to do from the beginning: force Rome into open battle on its own soil. Rome, meanwhile, was stunned. The Romang Senate had expected Hannibal to attack from Spain or Africa. They had fortified the coastlines and positioned armies accordingly. The idea that a Carthaginian general would march an army across the Alps was considered absurd. Roman intelligence had failed. Their strategic assumptions had collapsed overnight. Panic spread through the Republic. Rome scrambled to respond, sending legions north to confront Hannibal before he could gain momentum. But Hannibal was not interested in a direct clash under unfavorable conditions. He maneuvered carefully, luring Roman forces into terrain of his choosing. He understood Roman psychology, their overconfidence, their rigid command structures, and their belief in discipline over adaptability. The first major confrontation came at the Ticinus River, where Hannibal's cavalry outmaneuvered and defeated a Roman force, wounding the Roman commander Publius Cornelius Scipio. It was a small battle, but its psychological impact was massive. The myth of Roman invincibility was already cracking. Soon after, at the Battle of the Trebia, Hannibal executed one of the most brilliant tactical ambushes in military history. He baited the Roman army into crossing an icy river at dawn, exhausting them before the fight even began. Hidden Carthaginian forces attacked from the rear, and Roman discipline collapsed into chaos. Tens of thousands of Roman soldiers were killed or captured. All of this stemmed from one decision: crossing the Alps. The Roman Republic now faced a nightmare scenario. An enemy general was roaming Italy, defeating legions, recruiting allies, and refusing to fight on Rome's terms. Over the next 2 years, Hannibal would devastate Roman armies at Lake Trasimene and, most famously, at Cannae, one of the deadliest defeats in Roman history. Yet Hannibal's greatest triumph also contained the seeds of his eventual failure. Despite his victories, Hannibal never received sufficient reinforcements from Carthage. The Carthaginian Senate, divided and cautious, failed to support him fully. Supplies were limited. Siege equipment was lacking, and Rome, though battered, refused to surrender. The Alps had been crossed, but Rome itself remained unconquered. Roman strategy evolved. Under leaders like Fabius Maximus, Rome avoided direct confrontation, choosing instead to shadow Hannibal, cut off supplies and wage a war of attrition. Hannibal was brilliant on the battlefield, but he could not replace losses indefinitely on enemy soil. Years passed. Hannibal remained in Italy for over a decade, undefeated in major battles, yet unable to deliver the final blow. Meanwhile, Rome adapted, rebuilt its armies, and eventually took the fight to Carthage itself. In 202 BCE, Hannibal was recalled to Africa to defend his homeland against a new Roman commander, Scipio Africanus, the son of the general. To this day, Hannibal crossing the Alps is regarded as one of the greatest military feats in history. It represents the ultimate combination of courage, strategic vision, and sheer human endurance. No general before or since had attempted such a maneuver on such a scale, against such odds. Historians still debate the exact route Hannibal took. Archaeologists search mountain passes for traces of his army. Scientists analyze soil layers and ancient texts to reconstruct the journey. The mystery itself has become part of the legend. What cannot be debated is its impact. Hannibal forced Rome to confront its vulnerabilities. He reshaped Roman military doctrine. He proved that innovation could overcome numerical superiority. And he demonstrated that the impossible is often only impossible until someone attempts it. In Roman households, for generations after the war, mothers frightened misbehaving children with a simple phrase, "Hannibal is at the gates." That fear was born not in Rome, but high above the clouds, on frozen mountain paths where an army should never have been able to walk. The crossing of the Alps was not just a march. It was a declaration of intent, a message to the ancient world that boundaries, geography, and convention could be defied by will and intelligence. Hannibal did not conquer Rome, but he conquered history. And thousands of years later, his footsteps still echo in the mountains he dared to cross.